Zola, we're gonna need more rejects.
Evidence of our ancient ancestors' extraordinary technology, the karakuri, can be found across this land. Though they still worked when I was a child, it has been a long time since anyone could figure them out. That is, until you. Harness nature's energy, wield this ancient tech, unleash the power of the karakuri, and shape them into new forms. I imagine in time how you use these karakuri will change the very way you think about the hunt. Like the karakuri itself, you must be adaptable. And like the kimono, you must be ferocious. Plan your hunt. Set your trap. And bring down these giant beasts. The karakuri can be used for more than battle. They are your tools to travel with great speed. Gather resources. Build your skills. They can even guide you, as they once guided our ancestors. But karakuri alone may not be enough to bring down every beast. Seek allies and together tame a world gone wild.
Peggy 18.
We all come to a story with hopes and expectations, looking for an answer. Sometimes it would be better to live with that hope without ever finding the story. This is not the story you want it to be. This story will eat you alive. This story is a monster. And monsters wear many faces.
Much like protagonist Zack Fair himself, the story of the self-proclaimed country boy turned soldier first class is not one shrouded in mystery. If you've engaged with Final Fantasy VII or any of its various spin-offs, prequels, remakes, or animated movies, chances are you understand the weight of his legacy, which is, coincidentally, only rivaled by the weight of his sword. However, if you're looking for the definitive way to experience it, look no further than Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. A remake of the 2007 PSP exclusive Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core Reunion is a faithful retelling of Zack Fair's story with dramatic visual upgrades, full voice acting, and several quality of life changes.
By the way, what is your dream? To become first? Is it?
No. To become a hero.
Considering the game was already heralded as a fantastic prequel and one of the best titles on PSP, it comes as little surprise that this version is triumphant in making Crisis Core into a modern-day must-play for Final Fantasy VII fans. Not only does Crisis Core Reunion port the once fairly difficult-to-find game to several new consoles, allowing for a greater audience to experience the title, it transforms the game from feeling like a smaller handheld experience into something that can proudly stand beside Final Fantasy VII Remake as a worthy companion. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion follows Zack Fair, a skilled young man who quickly moves up the rank of soldier, Shinra's elite fighting force, to stand beside other legendary heroes like Genesis, Angeal, and the later notorious Sephiroth. However, once information regarding the various experiments Shinra conducted on these elite warriors begins to surface, the four colleagues quickly find themselves at odds with each other. Inevitably, these tensions set into motion the events of Final Fantasy VII, including Sephiroth's turn towards madness, the burning of Nibelheim, and Cloud's involvement in the whole ordeal. However, Crisis Core doesn't solely exist as a precursor to something bigger, as it succeeds in weaving an engaging, intimate, and emotionally impactful narrative of its own. A lot of this is due to the game's protagonist. Whereas Final Fantasy VII's leading man, Cloud Strife, has a tendency to be soft-spoken and a bit moody, Zack is exuberant and extraordinarily likable. Throughout the game, Zack's mentor Angeal likens the fighter to a puppy and affectionately teases him for his hyperactivity and eagerness.
集中力ゼロ。子犬のように落ち着かない。
アンジールのやつ。
However, when compared to the other soldier members, like the stoic Angeal, the dark and poetic Genesis, and the no-nonsense Sephiroth, Zack is a breath of fresh air who is widely idolized within the soldier program, particularly by Cloud, for his proficiency, zeal, and encouraging nature. Outside of Shinra, these qualities also endear him to our favorite flower girl, Aerith, who shares a brief but powerful love story with Zack, complete with long-distance phone calls and tender letters. In Crisis Core Reunion, the emotional impact of all these events is amplified thanks to the entire game now having full voice acting.
Eyes infused with Mako energy. A soldier trademark.
Oh, you.
While some voices might take getting used to, as they differ from the original Crisis Core's performances, The new voice actors do a fantastic job in making the story more engaging than ever before. This voice acting also profoundly impacts how we view Sephiroth as the story progresses. Tyler Hoechlin's performance makes him even more sympathetic as the truth about his birth is slowly brought to light and his downward spiral becomes more heartbreaking. On that note, I was delighted to hear several of the series' new voice actors lending their talents to the characters who appear in Crisis Core Reunion, including Tifa, Aerith, Song, Reno, Rude, and several others. This is all a part of Square Enix's push to make Crisis Core more cohesive with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which it ultimately does with gusto. This feat is also accomplished by how much care the team put into visually upgrading Crisis Core. Every location is lush, intricate, and has been adjusted to more closely resemble the world we see in Final Fantasy VII Remake, which makes the game's trips to Junon, Costa del Sol, Nibelheim, Shinra Manor, and Gongaga, areas that we've yet to venture to in the remix but we will see in the future, a bit surreal. In Crisis Core Reunion, we're presumably getting our first look at what lies ahead for us in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which, if you're a die-hard fan, makes the game well worth playing in itself. As someone who has spent the last few years yearning to see what wandering through Shinra Manor will feel like, or how grand the streets of Junon might feel as Cloud is tasked with parading down them, it was an emotional experience to see even a less graphically intensive glimpse at what's on the horizon. Crisis Core's gameplay systems remain intact, albeit streamlined and remapped in fantastic ways. Those not familiar with the gameplay will find it to be unusual but exciting. Rather than Final Fantasy VII's turn-based system, Crisis Core Reunion features fast-paced action-style combat. While the game's simplistic hacking, slashing, and blocking is a fun time by itself, with challenging enemies requiring fast reflexes and quick planning, Zack can also equip up to 6 pieces of materia, which grant him spells and abilities he can use in battle. In the original Crisis Core, cycling through all of these combat options could be daunting, as you were forced to use R1 and L1 to scroll through them all, then hit X on which one you wanted to use. In Crisis Core Reunion, this has been completely overhauled, as you can now hold R1 and assign these abilities to various buttons to make combat less frustrating and more efficient. Crisis Core Reunion also improves one of the original game's most notable features, the Digital Mind Wave. Also referred to as the DMW, it's a constantly spinning slot machine-style combat enhancer that lurks in the upper left corner of your screen during combat. The icons featured on the slots are characters and summons you meet throughout the game, with characters providing you limit breaks based on Zack's relationship to them, and summons granting you the ability to, well, summon them. As your relationships with certain characters are altered, you become more or less likely to see them make an appearance in the DMW. In theory, it's an incredibly strange feature, as this slot machine is responsible for allowing you to dish out your hardest hitting moves as well as level up. In execution, however, the DMW is extremely fun and satisfying, generally working out fairly well for players while also introducing an element of randomness to battles that keep them fresh. In the original Crisis Core, this feature did earn some criticism for its modulating phase, which would grind battles to a halt as the slots took up the entire screen. These phases no longer exist, though Crisis Core Reunion will still interrupt battles to show brief cutscenes when the slots land on certain characters. Considering the time we get with Zack is so brief, I found these cutscenes not only fascinating to watch, but needed. As an extroverted person who is supremely devoted to the people around him, just take a look at how many text messages the guy gets, having this mechanic where Zack's relationships play a role on his mental state, and subsequently the way he battles, is a brilliant choice that tells us a lot about him without adding hours onto Crisis Core's story. All these unique qualities create a tangible difference in Final Fantasy VII and Crisis Core's gameplay, which drives just how different Zack and Cloud truly are. Crisis Core also features materia fusion, which allows you to take leveled up materia and combine it with other types of materia to create new and more powerful